Hello, everyone. My name is Keith, amateur radio call WD4PTJ. You know, I guess just about any activity that you engage in, sooner or later there's some kind of disagreement, some kind of controversy, some kind of drama that comes up, and unfortunately, ham radio is no different in that regard. It seems that recently a certain net that operates on 20 meters, certain well-known net, has come under fire from some people. And that net is the Maritime Mobile Service Net. Apparently, some ham radio operator had posted on Reddit how he had been calling CQ on 14.300. He said he had got on there and asked if the frequency was in use and then started calling CQ. He didn't hear anybody before that. And after he started calling CQ, somebody came back and he said they rudely told him that a net was in process. Now, he never explained exactly what they said that was rude. You know, how did they tell him? What did he think was rude about the way that they told him? You know, I don't know. But anyway, this was picked up also by a certain well-known ham radio YouTube channel that made a video about it. And I've also seen a post about it, at least one post about it, on a ham radio Facebook page. And so I decided to make this video to kind of in defense of the Maritime Mobile Service Net. So first, I think we need to look at just what the Maritime Mobile Service Net is. So what is the Maritime Mobile Service Net? This is off their website. The Maritime Mobile Service Net was launched on January the 3rd, 1968. And then it's going to list a bunch of names and call signs, and with all respect to them, I won't go through every one of those. Back in those days, U.S. naval vessels were not allowed to have a Mars station on board. To get around this group of shoreside hams dedicated themselves to running phone patches for the naval vessels and the ham bands, particularly 20 meters. The original operating frequency chosen was 14.320 megahertz, but the net had to move to 14.317 megahertz a few weeks later to avoid excessive interference. In 1969, when the net moved to 14.313 megahertz, it also established 14.300 as an alternative working frequency, and for years operated on either frequency depending on nearby interference. But since before 2000, the net has operated exclusively on 14.300 megahertz. The original purpose of the Maritime Mobile Service Net was to serve those who served in the United States military during the Vietnam crisis. Since that time, the network has grown considerably in hours of operation and service provided, and consists of a dedicated group of radio amateurs who unselfishly volunteer their time, equipment, and efforts to serve and assist those in need of communications from foreign countries and the high seas. Our primary purpose now is that of handling legal third-party traffic for maritime mobiles, both pleasure and commercial, and overseas deployed military personnel. We also help missionaries in foreign countries and volunteer net control stations throughout North America and the Caribbean maintain the network. Furthermore, these stations are assisted by relay stations to ensure total coverage of the Atlantic Ocean, Mediterranean and Caribbean seas, and the Eastern Pacific Ocean. The network in particular has been formally recognized for its work with emergency traffic by the Department of Homeland Security, the United States Coast Guard, the National Weather Service, to mention a few. The network acts as a weather beacon for ships during periods of severe weather and regularly repeats high seas and tropical weather warnings and bulletins from the National Weather Service and the National Hurricane Center. The Maritime Mobile Service Net is operated every day from 12 p.m. until 10 p.m. Eastern Time on the 20-meter Global Emergency Center of Activity frequency of 14.300 megahertz as outlined by the Amateur Radio Union. All amateur radio operators are invited to participate simply by checking in. If you have a phone patch at your station, please tell Net Control station and he or she will certainly try to put you to work. And this goes on to talk about the International Amateur Radio Union meeting and deciding that certain frequencies were Global Emergency Center of Activity frequencies. And I won't go through every one of those frequencies. Okay, let me say right now that I am not a net control operator for the Maritime Mobile Service Net. I'm not a relay station. I'm not connected to them in any kind of way like that. I have checked into that net a few times. It's actually been a while since I have checked into it. So let me say that, make that clear right off the bat. And one thing that people keep commenting about this is that no one owns a frequency. And they're right. No one owns a frequency. I've never seen or heard where any time with the Maritime Mobile Service Net says they own 14.300. And if anybody connected to them says they own it, then they're wrong. They don't own it. So that whole statement, I mean, sure, nobody owns a frequency. We should all know that. One comment sort of goes along with that is people talking about being on a frequency and a net's about to start up. You know, you're already on that frequency. It's a frequency a net uses. The net hadn't started yet, and they come on a little bit before that and tell you have to leave. Well, the same thing. They don't own that frequency. But there's one thing I want to point out where this doesn't apply. I wouldn't think that this would ever happen with the Maritime Mobile Service Net for this reason. Before they start up at 12 noon Eastern Time, there is another net on 14.300. It's been on there for about 3 hours. It's called the Intercon net. And it goes off at 12 o'clock noon Eastern Time, right when the Maritime Mobile Service Net starts up. And they sort of work together. And so the last net control for the Intercon net will make contact with, he's familiar with, knows the incoming net operator for the Maritime Mobile Service Net. They'll make contact. They'll talk for a little bit, exchange a little bit of information. You got any traffic? No. And then he'll wish him a good day, turn the frequency over to him. So it's never been a clear frequency. Nobody can claim that, hey, I was on that frequency and the Maritime Mobile Service Net ran me off to start, because it wasn't a clear frequency. It's never a clear frequency before they come on, because the Intercon net is on there every day before they start up. I think the only day where that may be different is, I think on a Saturday there's actually a Coast Guard net for an hour. But then again, it all runs together. There's no time in there where it was an open frequency and somebody could have been using it and the Maritime Mobile Service Net ran them off. I don't see how that could happen when it's hasn't been a clear frequency. And some people complain. They say, oh, when I turn over there, all I ever hear is a bunch of old guys rag chewing. Okay. They don't have an emergency every day. They're there as we've kind of gone over for anything that may happen, where there's maritime and emergency, boats need some kind of assistance. That's not going to happen every hour. That's not even going to happen every day. And so, yes, they fill the time in there when there hasn't been any maritime mobiles checking in. They fill the time asking for general check-ins. And, yeah, they'll sit there and give you a little signal report, ask how things are going with you, ask if there's anything they can do for you. But they're not going to sit there and rag you with one person for 15, 20, 30 minutes. If you'll listen, they'll keep it brief for a little bit, and then they'll ask for other check-ins. And on a regular basis, they'll ask for any maritime mobiles or any emergencies. So yes, they are filling up the time. If they didn't do that, they couldn't hold the frequency. I mean, that's just a fact. I mean, yeah, if you think that's a bunch of bull because they're holding the frequency by doing that, it's no different than anybody using a frequency, And so I guess for that, people come up with the fact, do they ever have any real emergencies? And I'll get to that. I'll get to that in a minute. I know the question comes up, do boats even have HF? Apparently some of them do. Because if you listen long enough, every so often you'll hear, even if they don't have an emergency or any traffic, you'll hear somebody check in that's in a maritime mobile. So yes, some people who own boats, whether it's commercial or whether it's a personal craft, some of them do have HF radios. And I think some people complain about how long the net is on that frequency. They're on there from 12 noon till I think it's 9 or 10 in the evening, Eastern time. Well, I haven't seen anywhere in the FCC rules about how long a net can last or how long a QSO can last, how long that you can hold a frequency in a contest, how long you can stay on a frequency if you're doing a POTA activation. There's no FCC rule that says, well, you're limited to only 30 minutes or an hour. So the fact that net goes on for several hours, it's not against FCC rules for them to do that. You may not like it, but the point is there's plenty of other frequencies for you to go to, Okay, so have they ever been involved in any real emergencies? And the answer to that question is yes. Here's a couple of cases right here where they've been of assistance. There have been two notable rescues nearly 1 year apart. The SV Hyatt on March 27, 2000 off the northeast coast of Honduras, and the SV Lona on March the 20th, 2001 off the northeast coast of Venezuela and west of Trinidad. In each case, one passenger was seriously injured from gunfire from modern-day pirates, and thankfully both survived. So there's two cases right there where they have been assistance to people that have been attacked at sea. Does it happen every day? Well, thank goodness it doesn't. But when it does, they have been there to help people. That's just a couple of the times when they've helped out during emergencies. I'm sure there have been others. I've seen some accounts of others. And there are times when they help out maritime mobiles when it's not really an emergency, an extreme emergency. They give them weather information, relay messages maybe back home to their family or something. So the idea that they never do anything, that's not accurate. And like I say, I do realize that for the length of time they're on there, you may may turn to that frequency, and all you may hear is what you just consider a bunch of old guys rag chewing. But they are there in case something happens, and they have helped out before. So I think for people to act like that it doesn't serve a purpose is wrong. And then again, even if you think it doesn't, they still have a right to be there, as much as you have a right to be there, doing whatever you're doing on the air. You know, whether it's POTA, whether it's in a contest, chasing DX, or just rag chewing, you know, they have a right to be there too. So, but I would point out, like I said, that they help out in emergencies before. I think another thing is that, especially people that maybe are new to operating on HF, need to realize is there's going to be times when you won't hear the net control station. He may be in an area where the band's not where you can hear him. He could be 20 meters and higher up bands on up to 10 meters. Once that signal gets past being ground wave, maybe 30 miles or something, before it makes the first bounce back down, especially on 20 meters, it may be 200-300 miles. You know, I wouldn't expect to hear, under normal conditions, I wouldn't expect to hear somebody on 20 meters that was 100-150 miles from me most of the time. So there are going to be times when you may turn to that frequency and you don't hear the net control, and you may not even hear who he's talking to at the moment, and you think, well, they're not using that frequency. And then when you ask if it's in use, or you start calling CQ, and somebody comes back that you can hear, and they can hear you, and they tell you the frequency is in use, then I think what happens sometimes is people get all bowled up when they hear that. I didn't hear anybody. They're just trying to hold this frequency when they're not using it. And it's just that conditions are where you're not hearing the net control at that time. So anyway, I don't know how this video is going to be taken. Maybe some comments on it, may not, I don't know. I will say this: if you're going to comment on it, if you disagree with me or anything, that's fine, but just be respectful about it, because if you're not, I'll just delete the comment. But so, you know, at least do that. Be respectful about it, and I would just as soon you didn't come back and give me that same old statement I keep on hearing: nobody owns a frequency, because I've already said nobody owns a frequency. I know that. I agree with that. You know, I don't know why it's any need to keep saying that, because I agree, nobody owns a frequency. I haven't seen where anybody connected with that net says they own that frequency. I mean, literally use the word, we own that frequency. I mean, if they have, then they're wrong. They don't own it. I pointed out before how that net starts up every day, coming right after the intercon net. It's very unlikely. I don't see how anybody else could get to using the frequency in between those two nets when they just, you know, go one right after the other. One net control turns it over to the other. So I don't see how anybody could say, well, they hadn't started up yet and, you know, ran me off because I was on the frequency. I don't think that happens with that net. I'm sure it happens with other nets that don't run to get right back to back with a second net. I'm sure that happens in those kind of cases. And personally, if it's me, if somebody comes on and tells me a net's about to start, I'll say, okay, I'll go to another frequency. I'll move. I'll be more than glad to. That's just me. And I realize that some people are going to be, they're not going to want to do that. They're going to be like, you don't own this frequency, you can't run me off. Well, I mean, this may be the way you look at it. Me personally, it's not that big a deal to me. They tell me that it's about to start. Okay, I'll go to another frequency, or I'll just wait around and check into your net. But I'm not gonna get all bowed up and upset about it. So anyway, if you have any comments about this, feel free to leave them. It's like I said, please be respectful about it. If you like this video, hit the like button and feel free to subscribe to the channel. Till next time, 73.
Incoming next control station for the opening session of the Maritime Mobile Service Net. My name is Don Ocean Nancy. I live in Lethbridge, Southern Alberta, 55 miles north of the Montana border.